Well, hello everyone. I hope you enjoy this video, but I find myself having to make a preface or some disclaimers. This video is not intended as some blanket indictment against all strong and assertive women, nor to insinuate that I have been innocent myself at all times. It's often through self-reflection and experience that insights can emerge. But one thing I want to make crystal clear: this is not some toxic, sneaky slap at any current friends or colleagues. When I have an issue with someone, they know it, and no under-the-radar swipes are required. While I do decry feminine passive-aggressive tendencies, that's not usually my problem. I'm usually pretty aggressive. And when I have beef with someone, they know it. So on to the video. Mirror, mirror in my hand, who's the baddest in the land? Well, hello. How are you? I hope you are well. Today, we are going to be talking about something that I like to call, and I've been calling it for a while, the Highlander Syndrome and toxic femininity. And I've discussed this with other women because I had thought at first it was just me, that I drew the ire of just certain other women throughout my whole life. There's been times where I've been good friends, or at least I thought so, with other women, and then suddenly they turn on you. And generally, it is other women who view you in some way as competition, generally for a position, particularly highly competitive positions. So, for instance, during my time on Libertarian Party boards, I've seen this happen not just to me. And listen, despite my angelic appearance, I'm no angel. I've probably done it to others unawares. Because what I'm going to describe, I don't think is necessarily on the conscious level. I think it is quite instinctive. But there's this predatory, deadly instinct that comes into play when women are in close competition with each other, and it turns into there can be only one, and it is a fight to the death. Now, this video is supplemented by a Substack article that I'll stick in here somewhere where you can go to read it, but I am basically following that format and just having a little bit of fun with it. So as I said, if you've ever been on a board with two or more strong and assertive women, you may have noticed this. When they work together well, it is a formidable force. But far too often, they don't work together well. They may on the surface work together well, but underneath there is this strange, dark, and primal undercurrent. And it seems to be a contest to be the belle of the ball, the prom queen, the princess. Men compete, yes, because I can hear it out there now. Not all women, of course not all women, and yes, men compete. But men competing is very expected, it's open, it's very accepted, and it's different. And we can pretend that men and women are the same, but on average, no, they're not. And in this situation, we are talking about an archetype, a toxic kind of female competition that is deeply, deeply subtextual, very passive-aggressive, catty AF, and manipulative. Now, I often like to wonder why this is. And in fact, there was just a comment on Twitter on why this may be, and there may be something to it. From an evolutionary social science perspective, why do strong women working in close relationship with each other compete in this very darkly dirty manner? So what I had speculated, and, I do think it's sheer speculation, but I've read some things that seem to back this up, that in more primitive times, the power of the muscle, brute male force, dominated the world. But that didn't mean that women weren't powerful. They were just powerful in different ways. And they learned to exercise their power in much more subtle, manipulative ways that evaded male attention, or were part of a more complex social web that is mostly opaque to men. And I would say it still is. So for instance, imagine like the stereotypical harem, where you have this high value man, or this man that's a great provider, a powerful man, a desirable man. Well, very often in more primitive times, they would engage in polygamy, not polygamy, polygyny, which means many wives. And there would also be many children. And if we were dealing with a patrilineal type of inheritance where a son would then assume the position of the father, well, these women were in tight competition with each other, not just to gain the favors of the one man, but to gain advantage for their children, particularly their sons. Because in more brutal times, it would not be unusual for whichever son it was to ascend, would then murder his male siblings so that there were no contenders, so that there were no rivals. So it was very advantageous for women to promote the interests of their sons, and also to secure good matches for their daughters. So this would inevitably lead to a manipulative jockeying for position, where they couldn't show power or demonstrate power in an overt way. It was a much more covert way. And what a friend had said on Twitter, and I know the problem with these conversations, and I'm not saying that this happened with my friend, but I know when you are talking about bad female behavior, you are going to draw that most terrifying of creatures, the Enceladus Maximus, who just pearly things, will just paint women in like the worst possible way. And of course, we could do corollary videos on how terrible men can be. So let's just get that out of the way. But what was said on Twitter was, men need other men for most of what they want to accomplish, thus stable hierarchies of dominance and competence. Women don't need other women for most of what they want to accomplish, thus a Malthusian approach. I'm not so sure I agree with that. Women do need other women for a lot of what they want to accomplish. And the type of struggle I am talking about here is, to just use a very cringe phrase, amongst the alpha females, amongst the alpha women, not your general average run-of-the-mill women. We were talking at women at the highest levels. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I think when you're not dealing with a struggle for quote-unquote power, women are very, very cooperative to get what they want. But that's not the setting that we're talking about, but I wanted to throw that out there in case anyone found value in that. So while this type of struggle, when you're dealing with the elite, when you're dealing at the upper echelons, may have had a primitive purpose, it does not serve us well in modern societies. And it's a toxic drain, particularly in very small, insular, volunteer societies, such as the Libertarian Party, and volunteer boards, such as in any nonprofit. Once you reach the struggle for the top, when you start to view all other women as a threat, let's put down the wand. Ooh, wouldn't really be grabbing a real sword that way, but as a threat that must be eliminated or at least neutralized. Yes, that is my Xena sword. So I've seen it far too many times, and not just involving myself as a target, though I have been the target multiple times, but with peers. And so I've seen it too many times not to be convinced that strong women in leadership easily fall into this trap of the Highlander Syndrome, of feeling like they have to eliminate all competition, that there can be only one. And the way this usually manifests itself is women who had previously been friends, sometimes really intimate friends, or in a mentorship type relationship, quite suddenly and viciously turn on the other. And from what I've observed and experienced, it is strongly one-sided, and it's very unexpected by the other. The target is left puzzled and betrayed. And also when you're dealing with highly competitive women, I have found there are often complicating factors of neurodivergence, and that also plays into this. So while I have pointed out a recurring problem that I know more than one woman is out there nodding, going, oh my God, I know what you're talking about. None of this is a solution. It's just pointing out a problem. So if you are a woman in this situation, most typically there's not anything you can do if the other woman won't stop and reflect upon what's going on. And this is a very, very brutal ritual, and most times does not respond to reasonable talk, but sometimes it does. And when it does, the oddest situation will happen is you will have a better friend than you've ever had in your life if you can work through these competitive issues. So, but mostly there are just mitigation strategies. So first mitigation strategy, withdrawal. If this is a situation that's just not worth it, it's just not that important to you, withdraw after reasoning fails. And there's no shame in this. This type of behavior on the part of the other woman is irrational. And if you can't reason with them in the midst of the bloodlust, withdrawal is a rational solution. Remember that what they're doing is instinctual, and it's not really even about you. And your rival probably doesn't even realize that they're doing it. Second strategy, fight. You can be the last woman standing if you wish. And unfortunately, sometimes this is, in fact, the best solution. Just know that unless you ender games that bish, you will likely have a perpetual enemy for life. And you will have that enemy for nothing more than winning a battle you did not start. These bitter battles can linger on and on. And there's something else to note about this, where I had said the rival often does not realize what they are doing because it's a lot of projection. They look at you and see themselves. It's the classic, portrait of narcissists gazing in the pond and seeing themselves reflected back. You'll get painted as all of the worst characteristics that this other woman is portraying. The last mitigation strategy is to submit. And I know for libertarians, that sounds like a dirty word in your mouth. But it's really not if you don't want to be in this competition. If you're not viewing it as a competition, if you're really just there to do a job and you're not in it for anything else. And there's nothing wrong with being in it for other things. There is nothing wrong with wanting to strive to be at the top of the pile. But sometimes that isn't what you're doing. You literally are just happy in your little niche. And if that's the case, why make yourself a target for something that you're not even striving for? So remove yourself as a threat, particularly when you do not want to be the queen bee. You do not want to rule the hive. Now, this may not work. It may need to be a continual effort. But if you really have no desire for the perceived contested glory, this is an honorable solution. Differentiate yourself and support your rival as a sister. Let her wear the crown. The crown is often heavy. She may value your help eventually, and you gain a true friend. Because remember, this is not personal. But to everyone else, when you observe like a really bizarre hate boner ritual between two women that at present do not even appear to have any real relation to each other, you are likely viewing the traumatic echoes of a past beheading contest. The women in these skirmishes have memories longer than an elephant, and the echoes continue through the years. Trust me on this one. So, in conclusion, I gave you a disclaimer about who I am not talking about at the very beginning of the show. But surely, don't call me Shirley, surely there must be some people I am talking about. And yes, there is. If we used to be friends, but we're not anymore, and what I've said here strikes home, I might just be talking about you, sweetheart. And guess what? I'm still standing and I'm not going anywhere. Toodles.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business, not because they want to